The night it all began should have been quiet, soft, and peaceful. Just a tired, heavily pregnant woman folding baby clothes in a small Brooklyn apartment. But nothing felt peaceful to Hannah Cole anymore. Not the faint hum of traffic outside. Not the gentle sway of the curtain in the warm summer breeze. Not even the tiny onesie she held against her chest, imagining her son inside it one day. Everything felt wrong. Across the living room, Ethan lounged on the couch, scrolling his iPhone with a smirk he didn't bother hiding. He'd spent the last week working late, but his dress shirt tonight had a strange perfume clinging to the collar. Something floral, something expensive, something that wasn't hers. Hannah didn't want to ask. Asking meant hearing lies she wasn't strong enough to confront. Her pregnancy had been complicated, her blood pressure too high, her stress level even higher. The doctor had warned her to rest, to avoid any emotional shocks. But how do you avoid shocks when you're married to a man who always seems one message away from destroying you? She tried to distract herself by organizing Noah's socks by color. But her gaze kept drifting toward Ethan's phone. He was texting fast, his fingers moving with a kind of excitement he never showed her anymore. The screen lit up brightly in the dim room, and for one brief second she saw a name she had never seen before flash across the top. Chloe M. Ritz-Carlton. Her heart stopped. A hotel. Not an office. Not a client. A hotel. Ethan tilted the phone away casually, pretending he didn't notice she'd seen it. "You should go lie down," he said without looking at her. "Stress isn't good for the baby." It felt like a slap. He said it so easily, as if he wasn't the source of the very stress he warned her about. As if he were the caring husband. As if she were the problem. Hannah stood slowly, her legs trembling beneath her extra weight. "Who's Chloe?" she asked softly. Not accusing. Not angry. Just exhausted. Ethan didn't look up. "Coworker." "Don't start." He always said that "don't start" whenever he was hiding something. It was his favorite shield, his way of turning her into the unreasonable one. He finally looked at her, but his eyes held no warmth, only irritation, like she had interrupted something important. A stabbing pain shot across her ribs. The baby shifted sharply, almost violently, and Hannah pressed a hand to her belly. Something in her body seemed to know before her mind did. This night would change everything. She tried to breathe through the tightness, but the room suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing inward. Ethan's silence feeling louder than any argument they'd ever had. Then another notification lit up his screen, this time with a heart emoji beside Chloe's name. Hannah's breath caught in her throat, and in that single heartbeat, the fragile world she'd tried so hard to protect began to crack wide open as a realization hit her with devastating clarity. Ethan wasn't just lying, he was slipping away from her, and she was about to discover just how far the betrayal truly went. Hannah woke the next morning with the heavy, sinking feeling that something was wrong but not yet proven. The apartment was still, sunlight slipping through the blinds in thin lines across the hardwood floor. Ethan had already left for another meeting, the same excuse he'd used so often it had lost all meaning. She rose slowly, her back aching from the weight of the baby, and shuffled toward the kitchen to make coffee. On the counter, she noticed Ethan's jacket carelessly thrown, like always. She picked it up, intending to hang it properly so the apartment looked less like a bachelor's cave. As she lifted it, something slipped from the pocket and drifted to the floor. A crumpled Starbucks receipt. She bent down, one hand against her belly for balance, and picked it up. 2 caramel macchiatos. 10:03 p.m. Lower Manhattan location. A location Ethan never needed to be. A time he claimed he was on Zoom with the West Coast team. Her throat tightened. She tried to tell herself it could be for coworkers. Maybe he was doing something kind for someone new at the office. But deep down, the explanation wasn't comforting because kindness wasn't how he treated her anymore. She laid the receipt on the counter and forced herself to breathe. Stress wasn't good for the baby, the doctor said. But so was honesty. And she hadn't felt honesty in her marriage for a long time. Trying to distract herself, she started cleaning the apartment. She opened drawers, refolded towels, reorganized the pantry. Anything to keep her mind busy. But in the hallway closet, as she tried to push aside Ethan's work bag, she knocked loose a black leather folder she had never noticed before. It fell open on the floor. Inside was a printed confirmation email. Ritz-Carlton, Battery Park, Executive suite reservation. Date: 3 nights ago. Booked for 2 guests. Her hand flew to her mouth. The Ritz-Carlton wasn't the kind of place Ethan would book for work. His company barely splurged on midtown conference rooms. And even if they had, why a suite? Why 2 guests? Why hide the confirmation in a folder buried beneath old winter scarves? Her chest grew tight again. She pressed a hand to her ribs, trying to breathe through the rising panic. The baby shifted, sensing her distress. She remembered last week Ethan coming home late, hair damp as if showered elsewhere, a faint trace of floral perfume around him. Expensive. Not something sold at a drugstore. She'd asked casually if he'd changed colognes. He'd laughed and said she was imagining things because of hormones. Now, she wasn't so sure. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from him. "Don't forget we have dinner with my boss next Friday. Wear something classy. No, how are you? No, how's the baby?" Just an instruction. A tremor ran through her. She wasn't a wife to him anymore. She was an accessory, someone he polished up when he needed to look good. She leaned against the counter, eyes stinging, pulse thudding in her ears. She tried to make herself believe she was overreacting. But then another message arrived this time, a notification from his shared calendar that she still had access to. RC meeting, 10 p.m., confirmed. RC, Ritz-Carlton. Same time as the Starbucks receipt. Her breath stalled. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't paranoia. This was something darker. Something real. She clutched the leather folder, her knuckles white. For the first time, the fear wasn't just about being hurt. It was about being trapped, alone, and responsible for a child whose father might already be halfway out the door. And in that terrifying moment, Hannah realized she had to know the truth even if it shattered what little she had left to hold on to. Because the next clue she found would confirm a betrayal far worse than she ever imagined. Hannah sat alone in the Manhattan Medical Center's waiting room, clutching her purse against her swollen belly as if it were armor. The morning commute had been rough, her feet ached, her back throbbed, and the subway's jolting stops left her dizzy. She'd hoped Ethan would meet her there like he promised. It was an important checkup, one where the doctor would assess her blood pressure again. But 15 minutes past the appointment time, his silence said everything. She checked her phone for the 5th time. No messages. Nothing from him except the leftover bitterness from last night's cold responses. She stared at the wallpaper on her screen, a blurry photo of Ethan hugging her from behind during a trip to Central Park last spring. She looked happy, radiant even. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. When the nurse finally called, Hannah Cole, she forced a polite smile and followed her inside. The room smelled of disinfectant and warm cotton. The monitor beside the exam table hummed quietly. She settled onto the paper-covered bed, her breath shaky as she lifted her shirt for the ultrasound. The gel was cold on her skin. The technician moved the wand gently, and the familiar swoosh-swoosh of Noah's heartbeat filled the room. That sound always made her eyes sting. It meant he was real. It meant he was fighting alongside her. It meant she wasn't completely alone. "Looks like he's growing well," the tech said softly. Strong heartbeat. 1. Hannah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. But the relief was short-lived. When the doctor entered, his expression was calm but serious. He pulled up her chart and spoke with the steady voice of someone used to delivering hard truths. "Your blood pressure is still elevated," he said, significantly more than last visit. Her heart sank. She already knew. She felt it every night, the pounding in her temples, the tightening pressure across her chest, the dizzy spells that made her grip furniture as she walked. "We need to be cautious, Hannah," he continued. "Your symptoms suggest early signs of preeclampsia. It can become dangerous for both you and the baby." Dangerous. The word echoed through her. She nodded numbly as he explained. Salt reduction, bed rest, stress management, stress. The one thing she couldn't avoid. Not with a husband who came home smelling like hotel soap. Not with a marriage unraveling thread by thread. Not with the growing suspicion that everything she believed in was a lie. As she left the exam room, she passed a young couple laughing softly as they looked at their ultrasound picture. The man kissed the woman's forehead. She squeezed his hand. Hannah looked away quickly, blinking back tears. She wanted that. She'd always wanted that, a stable, gentle kind of love. Not perfection. Just effort, respect, thoughtfulness. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Finally, she opened the message, heart fluttering with a tiny hope he might say something kind. Running late. Don't wait for me. No apology. No interest. Not even a question about how the appointment went. The elevator ride down felt endless. She stood among strangers, her fingers trembling around the glossy print of Noah's ultrasound. He looked so small, so innocent, so unaware of the chaos forming around him. Outside, Manhattan bustled with noisy taxis honking, tourists laughing, businessmen rushing with their MacBooks and briefcases. She felt invisible in the crowd, like a ghost wandering between lives she didn't belong to. Then, as she crossed the street, a sharp memory struck her grandmother lying in a hospital bed years ago, whispering, "Never stay where your heart is hurting, baby. Pain will eat you from the inside." Hannah swallowed hard. Maybe this pain wasn't just emotional anymore. Maybe it was killing parts of her she couldn't afford to lose. She pressed a hand over her belly, whispering to her son, "I'll figure this out, I promise." But deep down, she felt the sense that something terrible was coming. And the next discovery she made would push her even closer to the breaking point. The rain came down hard that Friday evening, turning Brooklyn sidewalks slick and shiny under the streetlights. Hannah stood outside the small burger place near Ethan's office, balancing a warm paper bag in one hand and an umbrella in the other. She'd come all this way because she wanted to try just once more to remind him they were supposed to be a family. Maybe sharing his favorite dinner would soften him. Maybe he'd smile. Maybe he'd ask about Noah's ultrasound. She clung to that small hope the way her fingers clung to the umbrella handle. But as she stepped closer to the restaurant window, wiping the raindrops from her eyes, her world tilted. Through the glass, in a dim corner booth, sat Ethan. Not alone. Not working. Across from him was a woman with glossy dark hair, a fitted blazer, and a delicate gold necklace that shimmered whenever she moved. Her smile was wide, relaxed, far too intimate for a coworker. And Ethan, her husband, leaned in close, hanging on to every word she said, his face lit with an excitement Hannah hadn't seen in years. Chloe. It had to be her. The same name from his phone. The same initials from the Ritz-Carlton booking. Hannah froze, raindrops dripping off her coat, her heartbeat thudding painfully in her ears. She felt like someone had reached inside her chest and yanked something loose. She watched Chloe brush her fingers across Ethan's hand. He didn't pull away. He smiled. A real smile. The kind he hadn't given Hannah in ages. Then, as if the universe wanted to destroy any last bit of doubt, Chloe reached across the table, wiped something from the corner of Ethan's mouth, and laughed softly. Ethan caught her hand, lifted it to his lips, and kissed it. The umbrella slipped from Hannah's grasp, clattering onto the wet sidewalk. The sound startled her, but neither Ethan nor Chloe looked up. They were lost in their own little world, a world she didn't belong to anymore. The burger bag in her hand grew heavier, the steam escaping into the cold air like the last breath of something dying. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as she reached for her phone. She didn't want proof. She didn't want to immortalize this moment. But some instinct, maybe survival, maybe desperation, told her she needed evidence. She raised the phone, fingers shaking, and snapped a picture. The flash reflected off the glass. She gasped and stepped back, heart pounding, convinced they'd look up. But they didn't. They didn't even notice. To them, she didn't exist. The rain grew heavier, soaking her hair and coat. Cars splashed water onto her shoes. The cold seeped into her bones. But nothing hurt like the sight of Ethan reaching across the table again, cupping Chloe's cheek the way he used to cup hers. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. Instead, she forced herself into the nearest alleyway, pressing her back against the damp brick wall, struggling to breathe. Her ribs tightened. Her vision blurred. Her legs felt weak beneath her swollen belly. She slid down the wall slowly until she was sitting on the wet concrete, the burger bag crushed beside her, tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. The city moved around her, cars honking, lights flashing, strangers hurrying past, yet she felt utterly, devastatingly alone. She replayed the image again and again, torturing herself with each detail. The way he looked at Chloe, the way he touched her, the softness in his eyes. He had never looked at Hannah like that lately. Maybe he never would again. Her breath came in short, painful bursts. She placed both hands on her belly, whispering shakily, "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." A cramp shot through her side, sharp, sudden. She winced and held her breath until it passed. The doctor's warnings echoed in her mind. Stress could push her body over the edge. And tonight was more than stress. It was heartbreak, betrayal, humiliation. She forced herself to stand, one hand braced against the wall. She didn't know what she'd do next. She didn't know how much more she could take. But she did know one thing. The truth she discovered tonight would push her toward a decision she never thought she'd make. Hannah didn't remember walking home. One moment she was standing in the rain outside the burger shop, heart in pieces, and the next she was climbing the stairs to their Brooklyn apartment with numb legs and trembling hands. Her soaked clothes clung to her skin. Her hair dripped onto the hardwood floor as she pushed the door open. The apartment was dark, except for a single lamp near the couch. She placed the crushed burger bag on the table, smelling the now cold fries mixed with the damp scent of her coat. Her breathing felt thin, almost brittle. Every beat of her heart pounded in her ears. She knew what she had seen. She had proof. But saying it out loud, confronting it, felt like stepping off a cliff. When the door finally clicked open an hour later, Ethan walked in humming, tossing his keys carelessly onto the counter. He didn't even notice her at first. He was checking his hair in the hallway mirror, smoothing it back with a self-satisfied smile. The same smile he'd given Chloe. "Long day," he muttered, loosening his tie. Hannah's voice cracked. "Where were you?" He stiffened. Slowly, he turned toward her. "I told you. Work dinner." She stepped closer, pulling the photo from her coat pocket. Her hands trembled as she placed it on the table. Ethan and Chloe kissing in the restaurant booth. The printed image felt heavier than a confession. He stared at it, jaw tightening, eyes darting between the picture and her face. "Seriously?" He scoffed. "You followed me?" "I brought you dinner," she whispered. "I wanted us to be okay. But you—" Her voice broke. "You were with her, holding her hand, kissing her." He exhaled sharply, annoyed rather than guilty. "It's not what you think. How many lies do you expect me to swallow?" Ethan threw his hands up. "You're overreacting. Pregnant women get emotional." The words sliced through her chest. He wasn't just dismissing the affair, he was dismissing her sanity. "I saw you," she whispered. "You weren't working. You weren't with clients. You were with her at a hotel, at dinners, everywhere you said you weren't." He turned away, pacing. "We were just talking. You make everything a problem." Her head spun. "Talking? In a suite at the Ritz-Carlton?" He froze. He hadn't expected her to know that. Slowly, he turned back, his eyes colder than she'd ever seen. "You shouldn't go through my things." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just accusation. The shift was so sudden it knocked the air from her lungs. "You're lying," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "And you don't even care." Ethan's voice sharpened. "Look, Hannah, maybe if you weren't so exhausting all the time, maybe if you weren't always complaining, always tired, always needy, maybe things wouldn't have gotten this bad." She staggered back, as if he'd slapped her. "Bad timing," he muttered. "You getting pregnant. This whole situation." Her stomach twisted. She could barely breathe. "Bad timing," she repeated weakly. "Our child is bad timing?" Ethan scrubbed a hand over his face, irritated. "I'm not doing this. I need air." He grabbed his coat and stormed toward the door. She reached out instinctively, grabbing his sleeve. "Ethan, please. Don't walk out. Not like this." He yanked his arm away so hard she stumbled. "Don't trap me," he snapped. "I'm not your prisoner." The door slammed. For one long, silent second, Hannah stood completely still. Then pain shot through her abdomen like a lightning strike. Her body tightened violently. She gasped, clutching her belly as the world tilted. Her knees buckled. She collapsed onto the floor, her breath rapid, shallow, uncontrollable. Another contraction hit, sharper than the first. Too soon. Far too soon. She tried to reach her phone, but her hand slipped on the polished floor. "Help," she whispered, vision blurring. Beneath her fingertips, she felt a warm wetness spreading. Fear surged through her. This wasn't normal. This wasn't safe. This was her worst nightmare. And as another wave of pain crashed over her, Hannah realized with terrifying clarity that she might be about to bring her son into the world completely alone. The world became a blur of pain and fluorescent light. When Hannah opened her eyes, she was no longer on her apartment floor. She was being rushed down a hospital hallway on a gurney, the ceiling lights streaking overhead like passing stars. A nurse leaned over her, speaking calmly but urgently into her ear. "Stay with us, Hannah. You're in good hands. Just breathe. Breathe." She tried, but every inhale felt like it shattered inside her chest. Her contractions were fast, too fast. Her vision pulsed in and out, and a metallic taste coated her tongue. She felt a warm hand squeeze hers. Then cold air. Then nothing. The world kept switching around her like a flickering film. "How far along did you say she is?" someone shouted. 32 weeks. We need an OR ready. OR. Operating room. Emergency. The words slammed through her fog, jolting her awake. No surgery," she whispered, struggling to lift her head. "My baby, please help him." Her voice dissolved into a sob. A nurse wiped her forehead and murmured, "We're right here. Your baby is fighting." Blur. Another contraction hit with brutal force. She arched, gripping the rails of the gurney, gasping for air. Her whole body felt like it was cracking open from the inside. Where was Ethan? Was he still out, getting air? Still ignoring her calls? Still pretending none of this was happening? A flash of memory cut through the chaos, the way he'd grabbed his coat. The look of disgust on his face. The words, "bad timing." The betrayal hurt worse than the contractions. They burst into a delivery room. Machines beeped. Gloves snapped. Nurses moved around her with terrifying speed. "We've got fetal distress," a doctor said. "BP is unstable. Blood pressure. Hers." She remembered the warnings. High blood pressure. Dangerous. Preeclampsia. A nurse held her cheeks gently. "Hannah, look at me. Do you have someone we can call?" She opened her mouth, wanting to say Ethan's name. But the truth hit her like another contraction. He wasn't coming. He hadn't answered. He didn't care. Tears spilled down her temples. "No," she whispered. "Not no. Don't call him. Not no. I don't want him here. Just no." Because she had no one. The room tilted violently. She felt herself slipping again, drowning in exhaustion. Another voice shouted, "We're losing pressure. Get her stabilized." Hands pressed against her belly. A monitor alarm blared. Someone said, "We might need to take the baby now." Her heart twisted. "Please don't let him die." Then everything went white. When she woke again, the room was quiet, too quiet. Her throat felt raw, her lips dry. She blinked slowly, shapes forming in front of her. A soft beeping, dim lights, clean blankets tucked around her. She was alive. But what about? Her breath caught. A clear bassinet sat beside her bed. Inside, wrapped in a tiny hospital blanket, was the smallest baby she had ever seen. His chest rose and fell in rapid little breaths, each one a miracle. "Noah," she whispered, her voice cracking. "My sweet boy." A nurse entered with a clipboard. "He's early, but he's strong. You did well, Hannah." Hannah's voice trembled. "Was it dangerous?" The nurse nodded gently. "You had severe preeclampsia. We were moments away from a full emergency. Moments away. Moments." Her hands shook as she touched Noah's tiny fingers. He curled them around hers with surprising strength. Then the truth hit her with crushing finality. He wasn't here. Ethan never came. He didn't check on her. He didn't ask. He didn't care that she almost died. He missed the birth of his own son because he chose someone else. The nurse hesitated before adding, "We called the number listed as your emergency contact." No answer. Of course there wasn't. Hannah pressed her forehead to her baby's hand, tears soaking the blanket. It wasn't just heartbreak now. It was clarity. She wasn't just alone in that moment, she'd been alone for a long time. And this was the night she finally understood that Ethan wasn't a partner, wasn't a protector, wasn't even the man she thought she'd married. He was a danger. To her. To Noah. To their future. And in the quiet of that dim hospital room, as Noah slept safely beside her, she realized with trembling certainty that this night wasn't the end, it was the beginning of a decision that would change everything. The hospital room felt colder after midnight, when the hallway lights dimmed, and the world grew painfully quiet. Hannah sat upright in her bed, Noah sleeping against her chest in a soft blue swaddle. His tiny breaths warmed her collarbone. Every rise and fall of his chest reminded her that he was alive, because she fought for him. Because her body fought for him. Because somehow, despite everything, he made it. But she didn't feel victorious. She felt abandoned. Her phone sat on the bedside tray. 10 missed calls to Ethan. All unanswered. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over his name. She knew calling again would change nothing. He'd chosen someone else. He'd chosen not to be here when their son nearly didn't make it. A deep ache twisted inside her. Not just betrayal, not just grief, something older, something lodged in her bones since childhood. Because this wasn't the first time a man walked away from her. Her breathing grew shallow. The memory came without permission. Her mother crying at the kitchen table, hands shaking around a cigarette, whispering, "Your father left because he never really wanted a family, baby." Some men are like that. Some men are like that. Was she cursed to repeat the same story? A sudden knock on the door startled her. A nurse peeked inside. "Hey, sweetheart. You doing okay? You look a little pale." "I'm fine," Hannah whispered automatically. It was a lie. She wasn't fine. She was exhausted, terrified, and utterly alone. The nurse entered slowly, lowering her voice. "Is there someone you can call? A friend? A family member?" Family. The word hit her like a jolt. There was one person, one number she kept buried in her contacts for years but never dared to touch. One person she swore she would never rely on again. The man who walked away from her before she was old enough to understand heartbreak. Her father, Robert Hayes, the man who built a powerful career as a Manhattan attorney but never built a life with his daughter. She had told herself she didn't need him. She had survived without him. She had learned to depend on no one. But tonight was different. Her hand shook as she picked up her phone. She scrolled past friends, coworkers, old neighbors. And then she saw it. Robert Hayes, attorney. He had given her the contact card when she was 22, after bumping into her at a conference she helped volunteer at for the hospital. He'd said, "If you ever need anything at all, call me." She never believed he meant it. But now, she needed help. Real help. Legal help. Emotional help. Parental help. She pressed the call button before she could talk herself out of it. The phone rang twice. Then a deep voice answered, groggy but alert. "This is Robert." Her throat tightened. Her lips trembled. It's Hannah." A long, stunned silence followed. "Hannah?" His voice changed instantly, sharper, worried. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" She broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in quiet, shaking breaths that carried years of hurt. "I had the baby early. I almost didn't make it. And Ethan, he wasn't here. He left. I'm scared, Dad." Pin. The word slipped out before she could stop it. Dad. She hadn't used that word in decades. The silence on the line was full of emotion she couldn't see. "I'm coming," he said urgently. "Which hospital?" She told him with trembling lips. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said. "Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you or the baby." She hung up slowly, staring at the phone in disbelief. 30 minutes later, a tall man in a charcoal coat pushed through the hospital door. His hair was graying at the temples, his suit slightly wrinkled from rushing, but his eyes, those same hazel eyes she'd inherited, were filled with something she hadn't expected. Regret, concern, and a fierce, almost frightening protectiveness. "Hannah," he breathed, stepping toward her. The moment she saw him, the dam broke. She sobbed into his coat as he wrapped his arms around her. Hesitant at first, then firm, steady, grounding. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the beginning. As he held her, he whispered, "You're safe now, I'm here." And for the first time since her world began to crumble, Hannah believed him because the man who once walked away had just become the only person standing between her and the storm that was coming. Robert stayed with Hannah through the night, sitting in the stiff plastic chair beside her bed as if afraid that if he blinked, she might vanish. He barely spoke, only asked simple questions about her blood pressure, her pain level, how much she'd slept. But beneath his calm, she sensed the storm building in him. Every time he glanced at Noah, his jaw tightened. Every time he looked at Hannah's bruised arm from the IV line, his eyes darkened with a fury she'd never seen from him as a child. By morning, after a nurse helped settle Noah in the warmer, Robert approached her gently. "There's something I need to ask," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Do you want Ethan involved at all right now?" The question hit Hannah like a cold splash of water. Want? She wanted a partner. She wanted a father for her child. She wanted a husband who didn't disappear into hotel rooms with other women. But Ethan wasn't any of those things. And last night proved he never would be. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't want him near Noah right now. But I'm scared. If he finds out I delivered early, he'll twist it. He'll make it look like I'm unstable." Robert nodded slowly. "He already will. Men like him charm on the outside, control underneath. They always know how to flip a narrative, and he'll use your medical emergency as ammunition." Her heart pounded. What do I do then?" Robert exhaled, the way a surgeon does before explaining a difficult procedure. "You disappear legally." Hannah blinked. "Legally?" He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "There's a protective program for high-risk family disputes. Not witness protection, just a temporary shield. New address sealed. Hospital records tightened. No public birth certificate access. It's perfectly legal and completely within your rights until custody is determined." Her pulse raced. "Disappear? With Noah?" "Yes." His eyes softened. "Just until we can build your case. Ethan walked away when you needed him most. The court will see that. But we need time evidence documentation." Her voice trembled. "What if he thinks I kidnapped my own baby?" "He can think whatever he wants." Robert's tone sharpened. "Truth isn't on his side. And I'll make sure the law isn't either." For the first time, she saw a glimpse of the attorney the public feared. The man who dismantled abusers in courtrooms. The man who fought without blinking. The man she once wished had fought for her mother had fought for her. Now he was offering to fight for both. "Where would I go?" she whispered. "I own a small condo upstate," he said. "Barely use it anymore since your stepmother passed. It's quiet. Safe. And it's yours as long as you need it." Hannah's eyes filled. She remembered being 8 years old, watching him pack a suitcase, promising he'd visit every weekend. He didn't. But today, he had shown up when no one else did. "Why are you helping me now?" she asked softly. Robert's face cracked, not with anger, but with guilt older than she understood. "Because I failed you once. And I'll be damned if I let another man destroy you." Her throat tightened. No words came. A nurse interrupted gently. "Paperwork is ready, Miss Cole. We just need your signature to activate the temporary confidentiality order." Hannah stared at the pen in her hand. One stroke would change everything. One signature would sever what remained between her and Ethan. She thought of the photo she took in the rain. She thought of the cold hospital bed. She thought of Noah's tiny fingers wrapped around hers. Then she signed. Robert squeezed her shoulder. "You did the right thing." 2 hours later, Hannah was discharged under her maiden name. No forwarding information, no public record of her whereabouts, no trace for Ethan to find. As Robert wheeled her toward the exit, Noah bundled against her chest. She felt fear. Yes, but also something else. A fragile spark of strength. Because tonight, she wasn't just a betrayed wife. She wasn't just a terrified new mother. She was a woman taking back control of a life she thought she'd already lost. And as the hospital doors slid open, cold morning air rushing in, Hannah realized with startling clarity that this disappearance wasn't running away. It was the first move in a battle she would not lose. Ethan stumbled into the Brooklyn apartment late Sunday afternoon, the smell of rooftop cocktails still clinging to his clothes. He tossed his keys onto the counter, humming carelessly. Chloe had been in a strange mood the night before. Complaining he seemed distracted, but he chalked it up to her being needy. Women were always needy when they felt insecure. He'd smooth it over later. He loosened his tie, expecting to hear Hannah's quiet steps from the bedroom or see her curled on the couch with a blanket. Maybe she'd cry, and he'd pretend to comfort her. Maybe she'd accuse him of something again, and he'd gaslight her into silence. Either way, he planned to walk in like the victim like he always did. But the apartment answered him with stillness. No lamp on. No dinner smell. No soft hum of the TV she liked to keep playing in the background to feel less lonely. He frowned, heading toward the bedroom. Maybe she'd finally gone to her mother's house in Ohio. Maybe she'd done something dramatic because of that silly photo she thought proved he was cheating. He rolled his eyes at the memory. But when he opened the bedroom door, something in him stuttered. Her side of the closet was empty. Not messy empty. The dresses, the maternity tops, the folded sweaters gone. The hangers dangled like abandoned bones. His heart kicked once, hard. He checked the drawers, pulling them open one by one. Empty. 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 A slow unease crawled up his spine. Something he wasn't used to feeling fear. He rushed into the hallway, opening the linen closet. The hospital bag gone. The crib, the one he built while half drunk, gone. The framed sonogram she had taped on the fridge, removed, the magnet still stuck there, holding nothing. What the? His voice cracked in the quiet apartment. He grabbed his phone, dialing her. Straight to voicemail. He called again. Same result. He cursed under his breath, pacing the living room. Maybe she was punishing him. Maybe she wanted attention. Maybe she was bluffing. But moving out? Taking everything? No. Hannah wouldn't dare. Except, maybe she would. After all, she'd been emotional lately. Irrational. Hormonal. He checked the bathroom. Half her toiletries gone. Her favorite lotion missing from the shelf. Her worn robe no longer hanging on the door. For the first time in years, the apartment felt like it belonged to him alone. And he hated it. "Where the hell are you?" he muttered. He dialed the hospital next. "My wife would have been admitted recently. She's very pregnant, Hannah Cole." The receptionist paused. "Sir, she delivered safely 2 days ago." A chill shot through him. "Delivered?" he repeated, gripping the counter. "She had the baby?" "Yes, but she's no longer here." "No longer? Where did she go?" His voice rose. "I'm her husband." "I'm sorry, sir. Her release information is confidential." Confidential? What did that even mean? Why would they hide that? He hung up, breathing heavily. His mind scrambled for explanations, each more panic-filled than the last. She couldn't have left him. She needed him. Weak people needed stronger ones. That was the way things worked. He texted her again. No answer. Chloe messaged him instead. So, guess the drama queen finally made her move. He clenched his teeth. Even she was becoming a nuisance. Pacing the apartment, he stopped at the kitchen table and noticed something he hadn't seen before. A faint square of dust where something had once rested. Her wedding ring box. Gone. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Not because he loved her, he didn't know if he ever had, but because losing control wasn't an option. Hannah leaving meant the narrative slipping from his hands. And Ethan Cole didn't lose. Not without a fight. He stormed to his laptop, already composing a plan, already shaping a story he could sell to coworkers, friends, maybe even the internet, something tragic, something that made him the victim again. But as he typed, a dark, unfamiliar dread settled in his stomach. Because this time felt different. This time, she hadn't just left. She had vanished deliberately, completely, and with their child. And deep down, even before he admitted it, Ethan knew, whatever Hannah was doing next, she was doing it with someone far more powerful than him. The condo upstate sat at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, tucked between tall maple trees and a winding walking trail. It wasn't fancy, not like the Manhattan offices Robert worked in, but it was peaceful, something Hannah hadn't felt in months. The first morning she woke there, sunlight poured through sheer curtains, warming the small living room where baby Noah slept in a borrowed bassinet. For the first time since her marriage began to crumble, she could hear herself breathe. But peace didn't mean life was easy. Her savings were nearly gone, drained by hospital bills, the cost of newborn essentials, and the financial chaos Ethan had secretly created. She discovered he'd emptied their joint account weeks before she delivered. Her name was still attached to debts she never agreed to. The betrayal cut deeper, the more she uncovered. To survive, she took part-time shifts at a local clinic, working evenings and sometimes nights. The staff didn't know her history. They didn't care about her marriage or the scandal she escaped. They just saw a tired but gentle nurse who soothed children with soft words and knew exactly how to calm a panicked parent. Still, the exhaustion was brutal. Some nights, Noah refused to sleep. Some nights, she stared at the ceiling, terrified Ethan would somehow find her. And some nights, when the house was too quiet, she wondered whether disappearing had been the right decision or if she'd doomed her son to a life of running. Then came Daniel. He appeared quietly, without fanfare, the way steady people do. He was the director of the clinic, tall, soft-spoken, the father of a 6-year-old girl he raised alone. His daughter visited the clinic sometimes, clinging shyly to his hand, and Hannah saw familiar loneliness in that little girl's eyes. Daniel never pried into Hannah's past, but he noticed things: her shaking hands when she clocked in after rushing from the condo, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she froze whenever loud arguments happened in the waiting room. One night, after a long shift, she returned to the break room to find a warm meal in a takeout container with a sticky note. "You looked like you forgot to eat again." She almost cried. Another night, when Noah had a fever and she thought she'd break from worry, Daniel helped her schedule an emergency checkup through one of his connections at a nearby pediatric center. He didn't offer pity. He offered presence. Robert, meanwhile, visited whenever his trial schedule allowed. He brought groceries, diapers, legal documents, and once a worn copy of Atomic Habits he said had helped one of his clients rebuild their life. His attempts at bonding were awkward but sincere. He asked about Noah's sleep patterns, about her job, about whether she felt safe. Every time he left, she felt a small piece of childhood resentment dissolve. But Ethan wasn't gone. Not really. Every few weeks, a new video or post circulated online. Ethan's sad eyes staring into a camera, accusing Hannah of abandoning him and their child. He claimed she ran off without warning, blamed her mental instability, even implied she had postpartum depression before giving birth. The lies twisted into sympathy from strangers. And with each video, Hannah's fear returned. What if he found her? What if he got a lawyer? What if he fought for Noah not out of love, but out of spite? One evening, after rocking Noah to sleep, she stepped onto the small balcony. The air smelled like pine. She held a warm cup of coffee in both hands, staring at the distant lights of the town. She felt older than 28, tired down to her bones. Footsteps creaked behind her. She turned to see Robert standing in the doorway, holding a stack of organized files. "Hannah," he said gently, "it's time." Her breath caught. Time for what? He set the files on the table. To stop hiding. To protect Noah legally before Ethan decides to strike first. She stared at the documents, petitions, evidence logs, screenshots, medical reports, 9 months of quiet rebuilding, all leading to this moment. Her hands trembled as she placed her palm on Noah's sleeping back. The hiding phase was ending. The war was about to begin, and she had no idea just how explosive the next step would be, only that the first legal move would shake Ethan's life harder than anything he ever expected. Ethan's downfall didn't begin with a scandal or a headline. It began with whispers, the kind that travel through office hallways faster than truth ever can. At first, he didn't notice. He strutted into the Manhattan office tower like he always did, wearing his tailored blazer, holding a Starbucks latte, pretending the world bent around him. But the receptionist didn't greet him with her usual smile. 2 coworkers paused their conversation the moment he walked by. Someone closed a conference room door a little too quickly. He brushed it off. People were dramatic. He was used to being talked about, but the shift became impossible to ignore when his manager, Greg, called him into his glass-walled office overlooking the skyline. "Ethan," Greg said, folding his hands carefully on the table, "we need to discuss your numbers." "My numbers are great," Ethan replied automatically, leaning back in the chair as if he still owned the room. "They were," Greg corrected. "But several reports you submitted over the last quarter, they aren't adding up." Ethan's heartbeat kicked up. "Meaning?" Greg slid a folder toward him. "Meaning they look altered." For a split second, Ethan felt exposed like someone had ripped the floor out beneath him. Then he forced a laugh. "Altered? Seriously? There must be a mistake." Greg didn't laugh. Corporate flagged it. "They're opening an internal review." Internal review. 2 words no one in the company ever wanted to hear. "Let me make something clear," Greg added, voice dropping lower. "This is serious. And the timing isn't helping." "How is that?" "The timing?" Ethan snapped. What does my work have to do with anything else? Greg sighed. Look, I wasn't going to bring this up, but your videos. Ethan felt heat crawl up his neck. What videos? The ones all over social media. The ones where you claim your wife abandoned you and your newborn. Oh, that. He shrugged. It's the truth. Greg raised a brow. You sure about that? What are you implying? But before Greg could respond, Ethan's phone buzzed. A notification. Another one. And then dozens. His stomach twisted. He glanced down. A comment on his latest viral post read, "She didn't abandon you. Hospitals confirmed she delivered early. Why weren't you there?" Another, "Maybe she left for a reason. Ever think of that?" And another, "Someone saw you with a woman at the Ritz-Carlton. Want to explain that?" Ethan's breath stalled. Someone had seen? Someone had posted? No. Impossible. He scrolled faster. More accusations piled in. Strangers calling him a liar, a manipulator. Screenshots he didn't know existed. A blurry photo that looked dangerously close to the truth, him and Chloe entering the hotel together. "Ethan?" Greg asked slowly. "Is there something I should know?" He stood abruptly, panic clawing through his chest. I need a minute." He nearly ran out of the office, ignoring the curious stares from coworkers. He ducked into the stairwell, gripping the cold metal railing as bile rose in his throat. Everything was spiraling. He'd spent months carefully crafting a narrative: poor abandoned husband, unstable wife, tragic victim. And now it was slipping. "Chloe." He dialed her. She answered on the second ring, sounding irritated. "What? You posted about us?" Ethan hissed. "Are you insane?" "I didn't post anything," she shot back. "But maybe people are tired of your pity party videos. Maybe they're putting two and two together." He clenched his jaw. "You need to clean this up. Say something supportive. Help me push the story." "No." Her voice was cold. "I'm done covering for you." "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm sick of being the side piece while you play victim online. I'm not ruining my life because you can't keep your lies straight." Before he could react, she hung up. Ethan slammed his phone against the railing, chest heaving. His perfect image, his shiny, polished world was cracking. And beneath the surface he saw something he refused to acknowledge. He was losing control. Of the narrative. Of the sympathy. Of the only power he'd ever known. And deep down, he knew why. Hannah. She had done something. She had someone helping her. Someone who knew how to destroy men like him. He stared at the glowing city outside the narrow stairwell window, his reflection warped in the glass. He wasn't the victim anymore. People were starting to see him clearly. And the terrifying part was this. The worst blow hadn't even arrived yet. Because the next strike against him would come from someone far more dangerous than gossip or social media. The conference room on the 29th floor of Hayes and Morrow overlooked the Manhattan skyline, its glass walls catching the late afternoon sun in sharp gold streaks. Hannah stood in the doorway for a moment, feeling impossibly small. She had walked through hospital halls and worn down clinics without fear. But standing here inside her father's world of power suits, legal strategy, and polished marble floors made her heart pound in a different way. This wasn't medicine. This wasn't emotion. This was war. Robert waved her in gently. "Come sit. We'll go through everything slowly." Slowly wasn't how anything in her life felt anymore. On the long oak table, organized with frightening precision, lay her past 9 months in the form of evidence. Screenshots of Ethan's messages. Bank statements showing drained accounts. Hospital records that proved she delivered alone. Images of Ethan and Chloe at the Ritz-Carlton. Even printed comments from his viral posts. Seeing it laid out was overwhelming. Each piece wasn't just proof, it was pain frozen on paper. 2 associates entered the room, both carrying MacBook Pros and notepads. They nodded politely at Hannah, then immediately slipped into professional mode. "Miss Cole," one of them said, "we're here to help your father structure your case. You're in good hands." She tried to smile. "Thank you." Robert adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Let's begin by establishing your objectives. First, protecting Noah. Second, securing financial safety. Third, formalizing separation and establishing custody boundaries. And fourth," he paused, meeting her eyes, ensuring Ethan can't twist the narrative to harm you further. Her pulse quickened. Can he really do that? One associate interjected, men with Ethan's behavior patterns often weaponize confusion. Courts see it all the time. That's why clarity is our friend. Another added. But disappearing legally was the smartest choice you made. It prevented him from filing first. See, Hannah swallowed hard. So he could have taken Noah. Robert's jaw tightened. He could have tried. The thought made her stomach drop. She looked down at her hands, fingers trembling against the table. Everything she'd feared in the dark, Ethan's manipulation, his anger, his ability to twist truth into lies, wasn't paranoia. It was real. Robert placed a hand over hers. You're safe now, and we're going to do this right. She nodded, but didn't feel safe. Not yet. One associate opened a binder labeled Custody Strategy. We need to establish patterns: neglect, absence, emotional endangerment. Hannah exhaled shakily. He wasn't always like this. Years ago, he was different. Robert's voice softened but stayed firm. We're not here to debate who he used to be. We're here to document who he is now. Pi. They reviewed everything, every instance he ignored her medical warnings, every time he dismissed her pain, every lie, every missing dollar, every video he posted online that painted her as the villain. With each detail, the weight on her chest grew heavier. She wasn't just reliving trauma. She was reliving it systematically, clinically, with witnesses. When they reached the financial records, one associate looked up, incredulous. He withdrew nearly $8,000 from your joint savings? Without telling you? The other asked. Hannah nodded weakly. I didn't know until after I left. Robert flipped the page. And he filed a life insurance inquiry in your name. She froze. What? Robert looked at her gently. He never finalized it, but he started the process. A cold wave washed through her. Why would a man start a life insurance inquiry on a wife who was pregnant and medically vulnerable? The room fell silent. Then Robert straightened his spine. This alone could shift the entire custody dynamic. Hannah felt sick. She had known Ethan was cruel. She had not known he might be dangerous. Daniel's voice echoed in her memory, calm, warm, steady. You and Noah deserve peace, Hannah, not fear. She clung to that. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours. Her mind throbbed from absorbing legal terms and scenarios she hadn't prepared for. When they finally finished, Robert closed the folder with a decisive thud. The petition will be filed next week. Once he receives it, things will accelerate quickly. She inhaled sharply. He's going to lose it. Yes, Robert said bluntly. But that's why we're filing from a position of strength. She nodded, gripping her notebook as she stood. Her knees felt weak not from fear, but from the enormity of what she was stepping into. As she reached the door, Robert called after her. Hannah. She turned. Your mother was strong, you're stronger, and I'm proud of you. Her breath caught. She blinked through sudden tears. But before she could respond, he added quietly, and whatever Ethan does next, we'll be ready. Show. And somewhere deep inside, she knew he was right. Because the strike Ethan was about to receive from that petition would be the first blow in a battle he never saw coming. The envelope lay on the floor just inside the door, thick and cream-colored, the kind used for wedding invitations or court orders, nothing in between. Ethan stepped over it at first, juggling his gym bag and a half-finished protein shake. But something about the embossed seal caught his eye. It looked official, too official. He set the shake down, annoyed, and bent to pick it up. The return address read, Hayes and Morrow Family Law, Park Avenue, Manhattan. His eyebrows pulled together. He knew the name. Everyone in New York did. Hayes and Morrow was the kind of firm that only represented wealthy families, CEOs, and people powerful enough to crush others with a signature. Why would they be contacting him? He tore the envelope open carelessly. Inside was a neatly clipped stack of documents. The headline on the first page made his stomach pitch forward. Petition for dissolution of marriage and custody proceedings, filed on behalf of Hannah Cole. For a moment, he simply stared. The words didn't register. They floated on the page like something misprinted. Then the reality sank its teeth in. She filed for divorce. She filed for custody. She had a lawyer. A big one. His palms grew damp. He flipped to the next page, eyes scanning quickly, heartbeat pounding in his throat. There it was again. Representing party, Robert J. Hayes, Esquire. Everything inside him turned to ice. Hayes. Hayes. That was Hannah's father? He didn't even know she had a father still alive, let alone a legal powerhouse who clearly had money, influence, and connections Ethan couldn't compete with. No, he whispered to himself. No, 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 she couldn't. I mean, she left. She abandoned me. Len. But the next line in the summons flipped his world further upside down. The court has been informed of medical circumstances concerning the birth and the respondent's absence at the time of delivery. Respondent. Him. His absence. Felt sick. He kept reading faster, more erratically, each sentence another blow to the chest. Marital abandonment. Emotional endangerment. Financial concealment. Unauthorized withdrawal of shared funds. Intent to manipulate custody outcome through online media. His ears rang. What is this? What is she talking about? He slammed the papers onto the table and paced the kitchen, pulling at his hair. She had evidence. She had a lawyer. She had a narrative, and it wasn't the one he crafted online. No, she can't win, he muttered. She can't. She's unstable. She's emotional. She's wrong. But even as he said it aloud, the words felt thin, weak, like excuses a child makes after being caught red-handed. He snatched the documents again, flipping pages with shaking hands. Toward the back he found something that made his stomach drop even further. A formal warning stating that any attempt to locate Hannah or Noah outside the legal process could result in court sanctions or protective measures. A protective order? Against him? He felt like he was drowning. His phone buzzed. A message from Chloe. You okay? You're blowing up online again. He ignored it. Instead, he grabbed his coat, the summons clutched in his hand, and ran out of the apartment. He needed a lawyer. Now. Someone who could fix this. Someone who could spin this. Someone who would understand that Hannah was the problem, that she left. She disappeared. She ruined everything. He arrived at a downtown law office 15 minutes later, breathless, hair plastered to his forehead. The receptionist looked alarmed as he slapped the papers onto the counter. I need help, he said through clenched teeth. My wife is trying to destroy me. He was ushered into a consultation room where a sharply dressed attorney flipped through the pages slowly, expression unreadable. When she finally looked up, her tone was cool and professional. Mr. Cole, this is comprehensive. Meaning? It means they have quite a bit on you. That's not true, he snapped. I'm the one abandoned. I'm the victim. She raised an eyebrow. Then why does this petition include financial misconduct, emotional neglect, and a record of your absence during a medical emergency? He felt cornered. She's exaggerating. Is she? The attorney asked quietly. He couldn't answer. Then she added, this firm is one of the most aggressive on the East Coast. If her father is representing her, you should prepare yourself for a very difficult fight. He swallowed. Hard. A fight. He liked fights when he was the one winning. But this felt different. This felt like a war he didn't know how to start, let alone survive. His attorney closed the file. I'll take your case. But you need to understand something. He forced himself to meet her eyes. You're not in control anymore. The words hit him like a hammer. And for the first time since Hannah vanished, Ethan felt something he didn't know how to process. Fear, real fear, because the next blow was coming, and he could feel it closing in fast. Ethan left the attorney's office with a folder full of instructions and a head full of denial. The sharp click of his dress shoes echoed down the hallway, but his mind was miles away, spinning, unraveling, refusing to accept what he'd just heard. His attorney's voice replayed in his skull. You're not in control anymore. He hated the way that sentence made him feel cornered, exposed, powerless. He'd built his entire identity on the illusion that he could talk his way out of anything. He could charm, he could fake, he could twist, and people would bend. They always had. So surely the same rules still applied. Surely he could fix this. When he reached the street, Manhattan buzzed with traffic and noise. He lit a cigarette, something he only did when he was spiraling, and dialed his coworker, Mark. If anyone would reassure him, it was Mark, a guy who thought Ethan was some kind of charismatic genius. Bro, Mark answered. You okay? Greg said you bolted today. I'm fine, Ethan snapped. Listen, I've got a situation. My wife Hannah, she filed for divorce with some big-shot attorney. Claims I abandoned her. Me, can you believe that? There was a pause on the other end. Isn't her dad a lawyer or something? Ethan froze mid-step. How do you know that? He mentioned it once at the holiday party last year. You were drunk and said something about him being dead to her. And then someone corrected you. Ethan clenched his jaw. Well, he's not dead. He's apparently very alive and trying to destroy me. Mark exhaled slowly. Dude, maybe you should chill on posting those videos. They're helping my side, Ethan insisted. People feel bad for me. Law. Yeah, but now people online are fact-checking you. And they're not buying your version anymore. Ethan felt a prickling sweat on the back of his neck. They will? I just need the right angle. Mark hesitated. Look, if what people are saying is true and she had the baby alone, she chose that, Ethan cut in. She left me, she took off without warning. Did she? Mark asked quietly. Ethan froze. He hated questions like that. Questions that made him think. He preferred questions he could manipulate. Mark, whose side are you on? He snapped. Yours, man. I'm just saying. You need a strategy. Not the victim videos. Something smarter. Ethan hung up without replying. He didn't need caution. He needed reassurance. Someone who would tell him he was right. He was wronged. And Hannah had no chance. Chloe. She was always eager to soothe him. Or she used to be. He called her next. She answered with an annoyed sigh. Ethan, I'm working. Treff. You're always working now, he complained, slipping into the neediness she once found flattering. I need you. Another pause. Longer this time. Did you get the papers? She asked flatly. He stiffened. You knew? She hesitated again. I didn't know details. But you've been lying to both of us. I figured something like this was coming. He scoffed. Lying? Chloe, she's weaponizing everything. She's making me look like a monster. Silence. Chloe? He snapped. I saw the comments. Ethan, she said finally. People posted pictures, times, addresses. You weren't where you said you were. Don't start, he growled. You're supposed to be on my side. How? She shot back. By pretending you didn't use me to cheat on your pregnant wife. By acting like you didn't lie to me too. A sharp sting cut through him, anger, not guilt. If you're not going to help me, what good are you? Chloe inhaled sharply. You should talk to a therapist, Ethan. Or a crisis manager. Or somebody who isn't me. He laughed bitterly. You think I need a therapist? No. I need my wife back. I need my family back. And I'm going to win them back. You don't win families, Chloe whispered. You just lose them when you don't know how to keep them. He hung up before she could say more. By the time he got home, dusk had swallowed Brooklyn. The apartment looked even emptier than before. He paced the living room, muttering to himself, flipping through the summons again and again, as if one read-through might magically change the wording. He convinced himself the court would believe him. He convinced himself Hannah was overreacting. He convinced himself the law couldn't possibly side with a woman who disappeared. But as he stood in the dim light of his kitchen, staring at his reflection in the microwave door, something ugly crept into his mind, a thought he tried to crush, but it lingered anyway. What if Hannah wasn't the one who should be afraid? What if she wasn't the unstable one? What if she wasn't the problem? What if someone else saw exactly who the problem really was? And as that realization dug into him, Ethan felt something he had never felt before in his life. The sense that he was standing at the edge of a downfall he no longer knew how to stop. The courthouse conference room was colder than Hannah, expected bright fluorescent lights, metal chairs, and a long rectangular table that seemed designed not for comfort, but confrontation. She held Noah close against her chest, gently rocking him even though he was already asleep. Her father stood just behind her, a steady presence, reviewing documents with the calm precision of a surgeon preparing for a high-risk operation. Across the room, Ethan walked in with a swagger that didn't match the panic in his eyes. His attorney followed him, polished, professional, and clearly irritated that her client had already damaged half of their case through social media theatrics. When Ethan's gaze landed on Hannah, it faltered. He expected her to look fragile, frightened, maybe even guilty. But she didn't. She wasn't wearing expensive clothes, but she looked composed, grounded, older, stronger. Motherhood had carved something powerful into her features, something he didn't recognize. "Hannah," he said with a forced smile, attempting charm. "There you are. I've been so worried." "Sit down," his attorney interrupted sharply. Ethan lowered himself into the chair, shooting her a glare. Robert and the associate attorneys took their seats. The tension was suffocating. The mediator entered the room middle-aged, calm, carrying a laptop and a stack of forms. "We're here to discuss preliminary custody arrangements, financial disclosure, and communication guidelines. Let's keep this productive." Ethan puffed out his chest. "Perfect. I want 50-50 custody." The entire room stilled. Even the mediator blinked. Hannah's stomach twisted, but she kept her focus forward. Robert leaned back in his chair, voice smooth but edged with steel. "My client is seeking full physical and legal custody. Visitation will be discussed based on demonstrated behavior." Ethan scoffed. "Demonstrated behavior? What did I do?" Robert opened a folder. "Shall we?" He slid a photo across the table, Ethan kissing Chloe in the restaurant booth. Ethan's jaw clenched. "That's taken out of context," Ethan snapped. Another document slid forward, Noah's hospital record indicating maternal distress with no partner present. "Also out of context," he muttered. "Next, financial statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals. That money was for us." Robert didn't respond. He simply placed the next piece of evidence. Screenshots of Ethan's viral videos portraying Hannah as unstable, missing, and dangerous. Ethan's attorney pinched the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Cole, you didn't mention these." "Sin? You didn't ask," he said defensively. "I shouldn't have to ask if you slandered the mother of your child online." Hannah remained silent, her fingers tracing circles on Noah's tiny back. Her heart raced, but she would not break. The mediator cleared her throat. "Mr. Cole, can you explain your absence during the birth?" Ethan straightened. "She didn't tell me she was in labor." Robert slid phone records across the table, calls, messages, timestamps, all unanswered. Ethan stared, mouth opening and closing. My phone must have been off." "Convenient," the mediator said dryly. Then, for the first time that day, Ethan turned toward Hannah, his voice softening in an attempt to weaponize familiarity. "Why are you doing this? We're supposed to be a family. You took my son." Before Hannah could speak, Robert leaned forward. "She didn't take your son. She protected him." Ethan's eyes flashed. "From what?" "Me? I'm his father." "Ty." "From instability," Robert replied quietly. "And from you turning him into a pawn." Ethan shot up from his chair, palms slamming onto the table. "This is ridiculous. I'm not some villain." The room froze. Hannah finally lifted her gaze. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut sharper than any shout. "You left me. You left us. Not once. Not in a moment. You left long before the hospital. And you know it." Her words hit him like a punch he couldn't block. The mediator glanced at the attorneys. "We'll break for 10 minutes." As everyone stood, Ethan stared at Hannah, stunned not by anger, but by something unfamiliar. Consequence. She walked out without looking back, Noah tucked securely against her. Robert placed a hand on her shoulder outside the door. "You handled that perfectly." She nodded, breath shaky, heart pounding with a mix of fear and strength. But deep down, she knew. The real battle hadn't even begun, because the next witness entering the fight would turn everything upside down. Chloe Martin sat on the cold tile floor of her bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror across from her. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, her hair was pulled into a messy knot, and the phone in her trembling hand buzzed every few seconds with notifications she didn't want to read. For months, she'd convinced herself she was different, special, the exception. Ethan told her he'd leave his wife. He said Hannah was suffocating him, that she didn't make him feel alive. Chloe believed him because she wanted to, because believing the lie was easier than admitting she'd become the other woman in a story she used to judge from the outside. But now the lie had teeth. The internet was tearing Ethan apart. And, by association, her. Worse, she'd been subpoenaed that morning. A sheriff's deputy had knocked on her door, handed her a sealed document, and walked away without a word. Inside was the notice. She was required to testify in Hannah's custody case. She tried calling Ethan afterward, but he didn't answer. When he finally did, he snapped that she was stressing him out and making everything harder. No apology, no comfort, not even acknowledgement of what she was being dragged into. She'd been used. Same as Hannah. Same as anyone who got close to him. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from her sister. "You're trending. You need to get ahead of this." Chloe squeezed her eyes shut. She didn't want to be trending. She didn't want to be known as the mistress who helped blow up a marriage. She didn't want to testify in a case that was quickly becoming a media circus. But most of all, she didn't want to protect Ethan anymore. She reached for her laptop still open from work and clicked into the folder she'd kept hidden for months. Screenshots, voice memos, photos, messages Ethan begged her to delete. She hadn't, not because she planned to use them, but because part of her had always known she'd need protection from him someday. The worst file wasn't a photo. It was a recording. A late-night conversation Ethan had with her after one too many drinks at a rooftop bar. His voice slurred with bitterness, his words dripping with resentment. "If she died during childbirth," he muttered, "it would solve everything. No divorce, no custody. Just me and the baby." Even hearing it now made her skin crawl. She closed the laptop quickly, nausea rising. For weeks, she'd convinced herself he didn't mean it. He was stressed, drunk, angry. But now, in the context of everything she'd seen unravel his cruelty, his carelessness, his obsession with control, the words felt far more sinister. A knock at her front door jolted her upright. She tiptoed to the peephole. A man in a navy suit stood there, holding a business card. "Miss Martin?" he called. "I'm with Hayes and Morrow. Your presence is requested for a voluntary interview before testimony." Her palms grew slick with sweat. Hannah's lawyers. Her father's firm. Chloe opened the door slowly. The man nodded politely. "We understand you were closely involved with Mr. Cole. We'd like to offer you an opportunity to give your account before the court proceedings." "Maine. Will Ethan know?" she asked, voice shaking. "Only what becomes part of the official record," he replied. "Per your rights, you may submit materials confidentially until then." Confidentially. She wouldn't be thrown in front of Ethan right away. She wouldn't be exposed overnight. For the first time in months, Chloe felt air in her lungs. "I'll come," she said. "I have things you should see." 2 hours later, she sat in the polished conference room where Hannah had sat days before. Her hands shook as she slid her laptop forward. "I didn't know how bad it really was," she whispered. "I thought I was helping him. I thought he loved me. I didn't know he could say things like this." Robert listened quietly, jaw tightening slightly as he scanned the files. "This is significant, Miss Martin," he said, "and it may change the entire trajectory of the case." Her voice cracked. "Am I in trouble?" Robert shook his head. "No. Not if you tell the truth." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I want to." And as the recording played softly through the room, Ethan's drunk voice murmuring words dark enough to chill anyone, it became clear. This wasn't just evidence. This was the turning point. Outside the closed doors, the city roared on. Inside, the tide finally began to turn, and Ethan Cole had no idea the woman he once used as a pawn had just become the witness who could destroy him completely. And the courtroom shockwave that followed would leave no one unscathed. The family courtroom wasn't grand or dramatic like the ones on TV. It was small, beige, and painfully ordinary wooden benches, humming fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old paper and disinfectant. But to Hannah, it felt like the center of the universe. Every breath she drew trembled with the weight of what was about to happen. She sat beside Robert at the petitioner's table, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles ached. Across the aisle, Ethan adjusted his tie with jerky movements. His attorney whispered instructions he clearly wasn't listening to. His eyes were fixed on Hannah with a mixture of shock, anger, and something sharper fear. The bailiff called for quiet. Judge Morales entered, a firm, composed woman whose calm gaze could silence an entire room. "We are here to address custody and protective concerns in the matter of Cole versus Cole," she announced. The air tightened. Robert rose first. Your Honor, we intend to present a series of testimonies and evidence demonstrating Mr. Cole's neglect, financial misconduct, and actions endangering both mother and child. Ethan leaned forward. That's not. His attorney pressed an elbow into his ribs, forcing him into silence. Robert called the first witness, Hannah. Her legs wobbled as she stood, but her voice stayed steady. She recounted the night of the argument, the collapse, the birth alone. She spoke quietly, without embellishment, without drama, just truth. But when she described waking up in the hospital without Ethan there, her voice cracked. I thought he'd come, she whispered. I kept hoping he'd walk through the door. Judge Morales listened intently, expression unreadable. Ethan's attorney rose for cross-examination, her tone careful. Mrs. Cole, could it be possible your husband was unaware you were in labor? Hannah didn't falter. I called him 8 times. I texted him. I even sent the hospital's number. And he didn't respond? No. Could his phone have been off? Hannah swallowed. He posted on Instagram half an hour after my first call. She's not. A ripple of murmurs swept across the room. Ethan's attorney quickly changed tactics. You left after giving birth. Without informing him. Isn't that true? Hannah's fingers tightened. Yes. I left because I didn't feel safe. Safe from what? Before Hannah could answer, Robert spoke. Your Honor, the next witness will clarify that. A shift in the courtroom. Chairs creaked. Heads turned. The bailiff opened the side door. Chloe Martin walked in. Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan's face drained of color. He looked as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Chloe avoided his gaze and took the stand. Robert approached gently. Miss Martin, how long were you involved with Mr. Cole? She inhaled shakily. About 6 months. Ethan jumped to his feet. You lying. Sit down, his attorney hissed. Chloe continued, voice trembling but clear. He told me his marriage was basically over. He said Hannah was unstable. That she trapped him with the baby. Run. Hannah's breath hitched, but she didn't look away. And did he ever speak about the pregnancy in concerning ways? Robert asked. Chloe closed her eyes. Tears slipped out. Yes. He said if she died during childbirth, it would solve all his problems. The courtroom erupted. Shocked whispers. Disbelief. Horror. Judge Morales banged her gavel. Order. Ethan's face contorted. She's lying. She's trying to. Chloe, what are you doing? Chloe's voice broke. Telling the truth. For once? Robert nodded to the bailiff. Your Honor, we have a recording. Ethan lunged forward. No, that's illegal. His attorney yanked him back hard, hissing, sit down or I walk out. The recording played. Ethan's drunken voice filled the courtroom. If she died during childbirth, it would solve everything. No divorce, no custody. Just me and the baby. Clean slate. Hannah closed her eyes, gripping the edge of the table to stay upright. She felt her father's hand rest gently over hers, steady, grounding, unshakable. When the recording ended, silence flooded the room. Judge Morales stared at Ethan with ice in her gaze. Mr. Cole, do you wish to explain this? He stammered. I was drunk. Joking. It was a joke. Nothing about this is a joke, she said sharply. Robert wasn't finished. Your Honor, we also present financial records showing Mr. Cole secretly withdrew $8,000 from the couple's joint account weeks before the birth died. That money was for us, Ethan shouted, and a life insurance inquiry filed in Mrs. Cole's name without her consent. The judge's eyebrows rose. Mr. Cole, is this true? Ethan sputtered, face flushing red. It's standard. People do that. Not without informing the insured party, she said coldly. And not when that party is a medically vulnerable pregnant woman. Lay. His attorney sank lower in her seat, mortified. Robert delivered the final blow. Your Honor, this is a pattern. Neglect, manipulation, financial deceit, emotional abuse, and expressed harmful intent. Judge Morales folded her hands slowly, deliberately. And then she said the words that signaled the shift Hannah had been praying for. This court has seen enough. Ethan swallowed hard. Because he knew what came next would end any illusion of control he still thought he had. The courthouse hallway outside the courtroom felt different, now, quieter, heavier, as if every emotion unleashed inside those four walls had settled into the air. The beige paint, the buzzing lights, the hard benches, everything looked ordinary. But Hannah felt anything but ordinary. She felt hollowed out, wrung dry, exposed, like she'd been peeled open in front of strangers. Noah slept in her arms, unaware of the storm unfolding around him. His tiny weight grounded her, even as her knees felt like water. "Let's sit," Robert said softly. He guided her to a wooden bench near the window. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Hannah stared at the floor tiles, tracing the cracks with her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't expect any of that." Robert nodded. "I know. I didn't know Chloe would show up. Or what Ethan said. Or the recording." She swallowed hard. "I wasn't ready, Howard." "You shouldn't have had to be," he said quietly. Hannah shifted Noah in her arms, blinking rapidly to keep tears back. "Dad, what happens now? What if the judge doesn't believe everything? What if Ethan twists it somehow?" Robert placed a hand on her shoulder. Gentle, firm, protective. "Hannah," he said, "you did everything right, and the evidence is undeniable. Ethan's attorney knows it. Ethan knows it. The judge knows it. Today changed the entire trajectory of your case. See." Her throat tightened. "It shouldn't have gotten this far." He looked down, exhaling slowly. "No, it shouldn't have." The way he said it soft, weighted with regret hit deeper than any courtroom argument. She glanced up at him. "You left us," she said quietly. Not accusing, not dramatic, just truth. "You left me when I needed you. I've spent my whole life wondering why." He leaned back, eyes closing for a moment before he let out a slow, painful breath. "I know, bah. That's all you ever say," she whispered, a tremor running through her voice. I know, but you never tell me why. You never explain." Robert rubbed his hands together, as if warming them before holding something delicate. "I didn't leave because I stopped caring," he said finally. "I left because your mother, she was struggling. In ways you were too young to see. And I wasn't strong enough then to save both of you." Hannah stared at him, stunned. "Mom told me you didn't want us." "Tall?" He nodded sadly. "She believed that. And maybe she had reason to. Your mother was battling addiction long before I understood what that meant. I tried. I failed. And when she pushed me away, I let myself believe it was what she wanted." He looked at her with eyes that mirrored her own soft, tired, begging for a chance. "But leaving you," he continued, voice cracking, "that was the worst mistake of my life. I carried it every day. I still do. Her vision blurred. Why didn't you come back?" "I tried," he whispered, "every few months." She slammed the door, told me you didn't need me. And when I realized I couldn't get to you without tearing your world apart, I pulled back, cowardly. "I know. I told myself I'd wait until you were old enough to choose." "Choose," she choked. "Choose between my parents?" He shook his head quickly. "No. Choose whether you wanted me in your life." A tear slipped down Hannah's cheek. She looked away, pressing her lips together to stop the sob building in her chest. "And when you finally called me," he added, "when you said you were in trouble, I swear, Hannah, I didn't stop moving until I reached you. I wasn't going to fail you again." Silence wrapped around them, thick, raw, unfiltered. For the first time in her life, she saw Robert not as the shadowy absence of a father, but as a flawed man who had carried his own scars. A man who broke, too. A man who finally chose to show up. She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her cardigan. "It still hurt," she whispered. "Growing up without you." "I know," he said, voice thick. "And I will spend the rest of my life making up for it, if you'll let me." She looked down at Noah, whose warm little cheek rested against her chest. "I don't want him growing up like that," she whispered. "Feeling like one parent abandoned him. Feeling like he has to earn love." "Bah." "You won't let that happen," Robert said. "And I'm here now, for both of you." She nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. They didn't erase the past. Nothing could. But they built something new, something sturdier than resentment. A second chance. Hannah leaned gently into her father's shoulder. He rested his hand on her back, steady and reassuring. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the abandoned child. She felt like a woman reclaiming her life. Stronger. Wiser. No longer alone. And as they sat together in that cold courthouse hallway, she knew the next ruling wouldn't just reshape her future. It would finally break the cycle that had haunted her family for generations. The courtroom reconvened after lunch, but the atmosphere felt entirely different now, charged, humming, tense. Even the fluorescent lights seemed harsher, as if they knew something irreversible was about to happen. Hannah stepped inside with Noah nestled against her shoulder, his tiny fingers curled around the fabric of her blouse. Her heart thudded, each beat echoing a silent prayer. Ethan was already seated at the respondents' table. Gone was the swagger, the arrogance, the smug confidence. What sat there now was a man unraveling, hair disheveled, suit wrinkled, eyes bloodshot from panic or rage or both. His attorney whispered furiously to him, but he barely reacted. He kept glancing at Hannah, as if searching for the woman he once controlled. He didn't find her. Robert placed a comforting hand on Hannah's back as they took their seats. "This is it," he whispered. "Stay steady." She nodded, though her throat was tight. She wasn't scared of losing custody anymore, because she had truth on her side. She was scared of hearing Ethan explode. She was scared of him making a scene. She was scared he'd hurt himself or someone else in his unraveling. Judge Morales entered, calm and commanding, her robe sweeping behind her like a shadow of authority. "We will now proceed with findings and temporary orders," she announced. Ethan jolted to his feet. "Your Honor, before you say anything, I need to speak." "I deserve to speak." His attorney grabbed his sleeve. "Sit down." But he shook her off, chest heaving. "My wife left me. She kidnapped my son. Everyone is lying to you." Judge Morales didn't raise her voice. She simply held up a hand, and the room fell silent. "Mr. Cole," she said, "sit down, now." Her tone wasn't loud, but it cut through him like steel. He sank into his chair, muttering to himself. The judge began. "First, regarding the matter of custody. After reviewing testimony, evidence, medical records, and the dangerous statements captured on recording, the court finds substantial cause to grant full temporary physical and legal custody to the petitioner, Mrs. Hannah Cole." 1. Hannah's breath caught relief crashing over her like a wave. Ethan slammed his fist on the table. "What? No. She's manipulating you. That recording was fake." His attorney buried her face in her hands. Judge Morales continued, unfazed. "Mr. Cole will be granted supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation and completion of anger management counseling." Ethan's eyes widened in horror. "Supervised? I'm not some criminal." "Sit down," his attorney hissed. "You people are destroying my life," he shouted. "She's the crazy one. She's the one who abandoned." Judge Morales banged her gavel sharply. "Mr. Cole, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." Silence slammed down like a door. The judge shifted her gaze to Hannah, warm, steady, full of something that felt like quiet respect. "Mrs. Cole, you acted in the interest of your health and the safety of your child. The court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances you endured." Hannah's vision blurred with tears she fought to keep from falling. Next came financial rulings. The respondent is ordered to repay unauthorized withdrawals totaling $8,000 to the marital account. Ethan opened his mouth, but the judge raised a hand first. "In addition," she continued, "the respondent will begin temporary child support payments effective immediately. His previous public conduct will be assessed as a factor in determining final arrangements." Ethan looked like he might faint. "You can't do this," he whispered. "You can't take everything." Robert leaned forward calmly. "No one took anything from you. You threw it away." The judge delivered the final blow. "Mr. Cole, until further notice, you are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Cole outside approved channels. Any violation will result in immediate restraining orders." Ethan's breathing went ragged. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. No. But it was done. "Court is adjourned." The gavel struck. And just like that, the illusion Ethan had wrapped around himself for years shattered into dust. As the courtroom emptied, Hannah stood, pressing Noah close. Her legs trembled with a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and something new, a rising strength she didn't yet know how to hold. Robert placed an arm around her shoulders, You won, sweetheart. But she shook her head. No, she whispered. We're not done. He won't let this go. Fie. Robert's expression turned firm. He doesn't get a choice anymore. Across the room, Ethan stared at them, broken, furious, defeated, but still burning with a dangerous desperation. And Hannah knew. The final confrontation was coming. Something was still unfinished. Something that would decide everything. The parking lot behind the courthouse was quiet, too quiet for the afternoon rush. The wind skimmed across the pavement, rustling leaves and carrying the faint hum of traffic from the main road. Hannah stepped outside with Noah in her arms, wrapped in a soft blue blanket, his tiny head resting against her shoulder. Robert walked beside her, a protective shadow only a few steps behind. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe. Not fully, not freely, but enough. She didn't get far. A sharp voice cut through the air. Hannah! Her feet froze. Her heart lurched painfully. She turned. Ethan stood near the corner of the building, face red, hair wild, tie loose, eyes burning with a mix of desperation and fury. His attorney was nowhere in sight. Robert stepped in front of Hannah without hesitation. This conversation is over, Mr. Cole. The court was clear. Ethan ignored him. His gaze locked on Hannah like a spotlight. You think you can take my son? His voice cracked. You think a judge gets to keep me away from him? Noah stirred at the sharpness in his tone, and Hannah instinctively tightened her arms. Please lower your voice, she whispered. He's sleeping. Don't act like you care more than I do, Ethan snapped, stepping closer. Everything you said in their lies, all of it. Ethan, she said gently, trembling but steady. You had a chance to show up. You didn't. You had a chance to be a father. You weren't. 4. His jaw clenched hard enough to tremble. I didn't know. You hid everything. I called you, she said quietly. 8 times. I texted you. I begged you to come. He faltered. For a moment, the fury drained from him, leaving something raw. Smaller. Hannah, we can fix this, he whispered, voice cracking. Come home. Bring him home. I'll stop seeing Chloe. I'll do whatever. Just don't take him away. Her eyes softened, not with love, but with a kind, aching compassion for the version of him she once believed existed. We don't have a home together anymore, she said. And Noah isn't something to win. He's a person, a child who deserves safety. Ethan's expression twisted. Safety? From me? You're insane if you think. Robert stepped forward, voice sharp. Another word, and I file a restraining order before sunset. Ethan's face contorted in rage. Stay out of this. She's my wife. Frey. Hannah's voice rose firm, clear, stronger than she had ever spoken to him. No, I'm not anymore. Something snapped in Ethan's eyes. You can't do this to me, he whispered. You can't ruin my life. You ruined it yourself, she said softly. Long before today, a single tear slipped down her cheek. Not from fear, from finality. Ethan stepped back, shaking his head like a man refusing reality. If you walk away now, don't expect me to forgive you. She held his gaze. I'm not asking for forgiveness. For a moment, just one. Ethan looked like a boy lost at sea, begging for a life raft he'd already thrown away. But then something hardened in him. A coldness. A stubborn refusal to accept the consequences of his choices. You'll regret this, he muttered. No, she said. I won't. Robert guided her toward the car. Ethan didn't follow. He stayed frozen in place, watching the family he could have had walk away. The drive back to the upstate condo felt lighter than any drive Hannah had taken in years. Sunlight spilled across the dashboard, warm on her fingertips. Noah slept calmly in the back seat, his tiny breaths soft and steady. When they reached home, Daniel was waiting near the porch, holding a grocery bag and wearing a worried expression. When he saw Hannah step out of the car, he exhaled with visible relief. You okay? He asked gently. She nodded. We're okay. Hull. He smiled a slow, warm smile that reached his eyes and took Noah carefully into his arms. The baby melted into him as if he'd always belonged there. Robert placed a hand on Hannah's shoulder. You did it, sweetheart. It's over. "Is it really?" she whispered. "Yes," Robert said. "The worst is over. The rest is rebuilding." And for the first time, she believed him. Inside the quiet condo, sunlight washing over the wooden floors, Noah cooing softly in Daniel's arms, and her father setting down a warm meal on the table, Hannah felt it bloom through her chest. Not fear, not grief, not survival. Hope. A new chapter. A safer one. A deserved one. As Noah reached out toward her and Daniel gently placed the baby in her arms, she felt the future shift softly, powerfully toward something she once thought she'd lost forever. A family. A real one. And she whispered to her son, voice steady, heart healing, "We're home now." Because they were. And no one, not even Ethan, would ever take that from them again. So, our story has closed its final chapter. But you, yes, you are still here with us. If you've stayed until this moment, something in Hannah's journey must have touched your heart in a very real way. Maybe her strength reminded you of your own. Maybe her pain echoed a place you've once stood in. Or maybe you simply needed to hear that even the deepest wounds can heal. You know, the Stoics had a simple truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Marcus Aurelius wrote that as a reminder that no matter how chaotic the world becomes, our strength begins inside. And Hannah's story is proof. She didn't wait for someone to save her, she saved herself. Step by step, breath by breath, choice by choice. Healing isn't sudden. It's quiet. It's slow. It's deeply personal. And if you're here, maybe a part of you is healing too. So, my dear friend, if this story touched you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that you deserve peace and safety, let me know. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story we walk through together. You're not alone. We're still here with you.